Finally forced out. The former Prince, now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has officially left Royal Lodge and will live in a home on Sandringham Estate in Norfolk.
For more than 2 centuries, the gates of Royal Lodge have stood as silent witnesses to royal history, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared anyone for the storm of scandal now raging behind those walls. A prince stripped of his titles, a king forced to exile his own brother, and a residence turned into the centre of Britain's most explosive royal crisis since World War I. Are you ready to dive into the full story? Because what comes next isn't just gossip. It could change the British monarchy forever. Let's start at the beginning, the Royal Lodge dream, and how it all went spectacularly off course. Picture this, a 30-room mansion in one of Britain's most exclusive locations, reserved for Prince Andrew. This wasn't a fantasy, it was real life. For over 2 decades, Royal Lodge wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of royal privilege, wealth, and tradition. This Grade 2 listed Georgian masterpiece sits majestically within Windsor Great Park, like a crown jewel gleaming in the heart of history. 30 exquisitely appointed rooms, 7 luxurious bedrooms, a sunken garden that could make any landscape architect cry tears of envy, its very own private chapel, and a swimming pool fit for royalty. But wait, there's more. An aviary, 6 separate lodge cottages, even dedicated accommodations for protection officers. And yet, the most valuable thing this mansion held wasn't gold or marble. It was legacy. Queen Elizabeth herself roamed these corridors as a child. Princess Margaret ran wild through the same halls. The Queen Mother called it home until her passing in 2002. When Andrew moved in 2003, he secured what many whispered was the deal of the century, a 75-year lease stretching all the way to June 15th, 2078. The upfront payment, a mere £1 million, and the annual rent, brace yourself. It was what's called a peppercorn rent, symbolic, almost nothing. Andrew was living in a multi-million-pound mansion for practically free. In 2008, his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson joined him, forming an unusual arrangement, a divorced couple coexisting in absolute royal splendour. Eyebrows were raised, whispers abounded, yet somehow it worked for 20 years. This setup appeared untouchable. Andrew had legal backing, a prestigious address, and all the privileges that money or heritage could buy, or so he thought. Then came the scandal that would change everything. Fast forward to 2024. Britain was in the throes of a punishing cost of living crisis. Families were choosing between heating and eating. And then the bombshell. The public discovered that Prince Andrew, embroiled in scandal and no longer performing royal duties, was living rent-free in a mansion worth millions. Can you feel the rage, the fury of taxpayers realising their money effectively subsidised a prince embroiled in controversy while they struggled to survive? The backlash was immediate, vicious and unrelenting. King Charles had been working behind the scenes for months, gently trying to persuade his younger brother to downsize, maybe relocate to Frogmore Cottage, a residence more suited to someone no longer representing the crown. But Andrew refused. His lease was ironclad. He believed the law protected him. He wasn't moving anywhere. Then came the literary bombshell. Virginia Duffy's memoir dropped in 2024, reigniting every dark headline about Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Pressure on the king became unbearable. The public demanded action, and the monarchy's reputation hung by a thread. October 30th, 2025. The day everything shattered. Buckingham Palace released a statement that sent shockwaves around the world. His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew. Let that sink in. A reigning monarch stripping his own brother of royal titles. The last time anything like this happened was over a century ago in 1917, when Prince Charles Edward lost the Duke of Albany title for siding with Germany during World War I. This wasn't just rare, it was seismic. The statement continued with ruthless clarity. Andrew would now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. No, His Royal Highness. No Duke of York. Just Andrew. And then came the hammer blow. He was ordered to surrender the lease and move to alternative private accommodation. The 75-year lease? Useless. The peppercorn rent? Over. Legal protection? Gone. What made this announcement extraordinary was that the palace didn't just strip Andrew's titles, they explicitly sided with his accusers. The monarchy made it clear they cared deeply about victims and survivors, morality over family loyalty. Andrew was given 12 months to vacate, with a hard deadline in October 2026. Yet insiders revealed that the king hoped Andrew would leave sooner, ideally by Easter 2025. The urgency was deliberate, calculated, and uncompromising. Sarah Ferguson, who had stood by Andrew through every storm, now faced her own blow, the loss of her Duchess of York title. Friends reported she was devastated, turning to daughters Beatrice and Eugenie for support. Meanwhile, questions arose. Would Andrew be reimbursed for the millions spent renovating Royal Lodge? The Crown Estate launched a full assessment. What they uncovered stunned everyone. When moving crews appeared at Royal Lodge's gates in late 2025, whispers of a hoarding crisis surfaced. Insiders described a shocking scene, room after room piled high with documents, photographs, and possessions collected over decades. What should have been a simple move became a painstaking archaeological excavation. The clutter is turning a straightforward move into a months-long ordeal, one friend told reporters. Another insider added, even if Andrew wanted to move tomorrow, he couldn't. The volume of possessions requires careful sorting. This paints a picture of a man isolated from public life since stepping back from duties in 2019, clinging to remnants of his former existence. This wasn't just clutter, it was a window into his mental state, a coping mechanism, a refusal to let go of who he once was. The practical implications were staggering. King Charles envisioned a smooth, relatively quick transition, but the hoarding meant the process would drag on until at least Andrew's 66th birthday on February 19, 2026, if not longer. Storage units had to be arranged, every item had to be assessed, keep, discard, or store. Every room required systematic, painstaking clearing. And here's the kicker. Despite all his investments, Andrew would likely receive zero compensation. The Crown Estate concluded that the mansion's condition didn't meet lease standards. Dilapidations, deterioration, and damage caused by hoarding wiped out any claim. He was losing everything and getting nothing back. Then came the shocking news of his next residence, Marsh Farm, a small working farm in Wilton, 2 miles west of Sandringham House, abandoned for years after the death of its previous tenant. Ramshackle, run down, and in desperate need of repair. From 30 rooms of Georgian opulence to a modest farmhouse barely sufficient for one man. From private chapel to dilapidated shed. From swimming pool and aviary to a property requiring extensive renovations just to be habitable. Sources revealed a key detail. Andrew didn't want Marsh Farm. He had his eyes on Wood Farm, Prince Philip's former retirement home. Bigger, more comfortable, closer to Sandringham. Denied. The reasoning, to maintain distance during family events like Christmas. That 2-mile separation wasn't random, it was deliberate, a buffer zone designed to isolate him from the family. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams put it bluntly, keeping Andrew at Sandringham was a method of control. By January 2026, repair squads descended on Marsh Farm, at least 6 men braving rain and mud to install security systems, patch walls and rebuild roofs. A 6-foot fence replaced old barbed wire. CCTV cameras were mounted, alarms integrated, and the property fortified. But the challenges were far from over. Andrew's relocation remained slow, delayed by the mammoth task of sorting decades of possessions. Every room at Royal Lodge had become a battlefield of history, memory, and sheer accumulation. Even the tiniest object demanded scrutiny, prolonging the move and testing everyone involved. Royal Lodge had become more than a house. It was a symbol of power, legacy, isolation, and the human cost of privilege. From 30 rooms of Georgian luxury to a modest farmhouse, from His Royal Highness to simply Andrew, the fall was dramatic and historic. Yet, through all this, the monarchy pressed forward, making it crystal clear, no one, not even a prince, is above the crown. And as Marsh Farm's fences went up, CCTV cameras were installed, alarms wired in, and renovations painstakingly carried out, the problems weren't over. The storm behind Royal Lodge's gates was far from settled, and the saga was only beginning to reveal its full scope. The estate at Marsh Farm turned out to be far less than Andrew bargained for, and the reality hit harder than anyone could have imagined. Right from the start, the property lacked suitable garaging for his fleet of luxury vehicles, and that alone sent Andrew into a simmering frustration. It also wasn't large enough to accommodate live-in staff, a fact that made his transition from Royal Lodge even more psychologically jarring. To compensate, King Charles arranged for a cleaner, a groundsman, and a cook from Sandringham to visit on a schedule determined entirely by the Crown. Can you picture it? Andrew, a man who had spent decades in the comfort of Buckingham Palace, now dependent on help arriving like clockwork, never fully his own. One source summarised it bluntly: it's a lot smaller, a lot less luxurious than Royal Lodge. Another added, he hasn't lived anywhere this small since he left his apartment at Buckingham Palace, where he had free reign of the building and grounds. But the surprises didn't stop at the size of the house. January 2026 delivered news that sent shockwaves through royal circles. Marsh Farm sits on a floodplain, a fact that had gone under the radar for many, but was painfully real. A 2024 flood risk assessment for the neighbouring Wolfer and Barnes estate spelled it out clearly. The Environment Agency maintains a flood warning system to protect residents and property. This wasn't theoretical. This was a concrete, official warning. If the pumping station failed due to mechanical breakdown or power loss, Marsh Farm could be inundated. The report warned that only emergency action with temporary pumping equipment would prevent disaster. Let that sink in. Andrew's new home, chosen by his own brother, could be threatened by flooding at any moment, dependent on equipment that might fail when needed most. Then came Storm Chandra, striking with fierce winds and relentless rain, just as these vulnerabilities were being made public. The children's play area at Sandringham had to be closed for safety, while Andrew's new farm was already under threat of flooding. Royal watchers were alarmed. This was a live demonstration of the environmental risks Andrew would face at Marsh Farm. The questions exploded. Had the risks been assessed before the decision? Was King Charles aware? And if so, why put a family member at such a dangerous property when safer options existed? Some commentators went further, suggesting a more calculated motive. The theory gaining traction was chilling. Marsh Farm, with all its flaws and risks, was part of a deliberate strategy. The property was chosen to make Andrew's life uncomfortable enough that he might eventually consider leaving the UK entirely. But the flood risk was only the beginning. Security concerns made Marsh Farm even more complicated. Experts warned the property was extremely vulnerable. Authorities went as far as extending Sandringham's no-fly zone to cover Marsh Farm, a move designed to prevent drones from surveilling the property. This came after drones had been spotted over Sandringham during President Zelensky's 2025 visit. The legislation covering Marsh Farm was formalised weeks before Andrew's titles were stripped, a clear signal that the move was carefully orchestrated, far from a spontaneous decision. The Secretary of State even issued a note emphasising that the no-fly restriction was necessary in the public interest for safety and security. Yet experts questioned whether Marsh Farm could ever reach the level of security Royal Lodge had, with its established infrastructure inside protected Windsor Great Park. The farmhouse was 2 miles from Sandringham House, on an isolated rural plot, making rapid response to incidents far more difficult. Sources revealed that King Charles would fund Andrew's security privately, rather than using public money, a significant ongoing expense. Ironically, leaving Andrew at Royal Lodge, where security was already in place, might have been cheaper. Amid all this, Sarah Ferguson delivered a bombshell. For years, she had been Andrew's constant companion, living at Royal Lodge since 2008, defending him publicly when others abandoned him. Their bond had seemed unshakable. But in January 2026, exclusive reports revealed that she would not move to Marsh Farm. A source explained, Andrew and Sarah have to move out by the 25th of January, and after standing by him all these years, she's now ready to spread her wings. She won't be moving in with him. Sarah would instead seek support from Beatrice and Eugenie, but make her own plans in Windsor. This marked the end of their unique post-divorce relationship, maintained for nearly 30 years. Losing Sarah's presence represented another devastating blow for Andrew. She had been his protector, his confidant, someone who truly understood the pressures of royal life. Without her,
Andrew moving up here to Sandringham, as you say, the people of Sandringham are...
he would face Marsh Farm utterly alone. The timing of her decision raises a haunting question. Did she know something about the farm, or Andrew's long-term prospects, that made her unwilling to tie her fate to him any longer? Let's take stock of what Andrew was losing. At Royal Lodge, he enjoyed a private swimming pool. Gone. A lavish aviary. Gone. A beautifully cultivated sunken garden.
Hello, Buckingham Palace had said Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's move from Royal Lodge would be early this year.
Gone. A private royal chapel for worship. Gone. Meaning he would need to attend services elsewhere, risking exposure. 6 lodge cottages for staff and guests. Gone. On-call live-in staff attending to every need. Gone. Suitable garaging for luxury vehicles. Gone. Most importantly, his independence, autonomy, and dignity. Gone. Friends noted the reality of Marsh Farm had hit him hard. One phrase summed it up. He really didn't want this. And yet, the formal eviction left him no choice. Royal experts noted that King Charles's decision sent a clear message. Royal titles and privileges carry expectations. Fail to meet them, and consequences are swift, severe, and permanent. Marsh Farm's isolation strategy was unmistakable. By placing Andrew 2 miles from Sandringham, King Charles ensured that his exile was geographic, social, and ceremonial. Reports confirmed Andrew requested Wood Farm, Prince Philip's retirement home, only to be denied because it was too close to the rest of the family. That rejection spelled the king's strategy in plain sight. Andrew could have accommodation on the Sandringham estate, but it had to be carefully chosen, far enough away that he wouldn't accidentally run into other royals, yet close enough to remain under discreet oversight. The 2-mile distance to Marsh Farm represented the bare minimum buffer zone acceptable to the palace. But this isolation went deeper than just physical separation. At Royal Lodge, Andrew had spent decades building connections, relationships, and a familiar social network within Windsor. Marsh Farm was entirely different, remote, rural, surrounded by farmland, and a place where Andrew had no established social ties. He would be starting over socially at age 65 or 66, completely removed from familiar environments, routines, and acquaintances he had relied on for decades. This move also meant Andrew would be far from his daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, who maintained residences in or around London. They had been critical sources of support and emotional stability for him over the years. Friends indicated that Andrew understood the isolation strategy and might even consider leaving the United Kingdom entirely. One insider explained, he could relocate to the Middle East, where he has long-standing business contacts and connections. This isn't speculation. It's a serious possibility. Experts weighed this scenario seriously, considering that countries like Dubai and the UAE could offer him a life where public scrutiny might not follow him as relentlessly, giving him a chance to rebuild away from constant media attention and royal pressure. The ultimate revelation was even more surprising. Marsh Farm might not even be Andrew's permanent home. By mid-January 2026, reports suggested that the farmhouse could be temporary or interim accommodation, a holding arrangement while the palace arranged other options. Let that sink in. After decades of privilege, multi-million-pound mansions and inherited status, Marsh Farm, despite security upgrades, fencing and renovations, might only be a stopgap. This raised profound questions about King Charles's intentions. Was this truly a long-term exile, or a temporary compromise meant to ease Andrew into a quieter life? Sources suggested that Andrew could be offered temporary housing on the estate while renovations continued on Marsh Farm or another property.
This is the big one. GB News can confirm that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has relocated to a property on the Sandringham estate.
But the details remained unclear. This meant Andrew's housing crisis was far from resolved. He might face additional moves, continued uncertainty, and the stress of adapting to new environments. Each shift represented further instability, magnified by his lack of experience managing life completely independently. Observers interpreted the temporary label as evidence that King Charles had not yet finalised plans for Andrew. The extensive investment in Marsh Farm, security fencing, CCTV, improved infrastructure, seemed inconsistent with a truly short-term stay. Another interpretation suggested the temporary designation was a strategic compromise. Andrew could accept the move without feeling entirely defeated, holding on to the hope that circumstances might improve in the future. By presenting Marsh Farm as interim housing, the palace framed the move as a reasonable short-term solution rather than permanent exile. Experts noted this left options open. If Andrew's health declined, if security threats increased, if flooding risks worsened, or if public opinion shifted, adjustments could be made. But the deeper message was unmistakable. Marsh Farm isn't just about flood risk, inadequate garaging, or enforced isolation. It represents a complete transformation of Andrew's life and status. From a prince with a secure home, prestige, and a defined role, Andrew has become someone with temporary housing, stripped of titles, and forced into a precarious existence. His future in the United Kingdom itself may be negotiable. Marsh Farm embodies more than a smaller home.
Police are assessing those allegations that a woman was sent by Jeffrey Epstein to meet Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
It symbolises a diminished, uncertain life that could change again at any moment. From 30-room mansion to modest farmhouse. From peppercorn rent to dependence on his brother's charity. From active royal duties to enforced exile, Andrew's world has been upended. From Prince Andrew to simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the transformation is staggering. And here's what makes this truly explosive. What he does next could shape the monarchy itself. Will he accept his exile quietly, fading into obscurity at Marsh Farm? Will he fight back legally, risking a public spectacle that could damage the crown? Could he give interviews, write a revealing memoir, or even leave the United Kingdom entirely, beyond the royal family's control? King Charles's actions are unprecedented, but have they solved the problem or merely postponed an inevitable confrontation? Because a disgraced prince, isolated, stripped of titles, facing environmental risks and profound uncertainty, may be the most dangerous kind of royal of all. Now it's your turn. Which part of Andrew's eviction shocks you the most? The flood threats, the hoarding crisis, Sarah Ferguson's departure, or the revelation that Marsh Farm may only be temporary? Do you think King Charles handled this properly, or should there have been a different approach? And what do you think Andrew will do next? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters, because this story is far from over and every perspective counts. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, share it with anyone fascinated by royal drama, and subscribe so you can follow the story as it unfolds. Trust us, the Crown has never faced anything like this before, and how it ends could completely reshape the monarchy. Check out the next video on your screen for even more explosive revelations. You won't want to miss a single moment.